We're almost halfway through the year, and a lot of people are running on empty without fully realizing it. Grow Therapy helps you find care that's covered by insurance before burnout becomes the baseline. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits you, not the other way around. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. You can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, identity, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Grow accepts over 100 insurance plans, including Medicaid in some states. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/booknow to get started. That's growtherapy.com/booknow. growtherapy.com/booknow. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Attenborough, and I'm feeling very tired today. So, I don't know, I'm feeling kind of mellow as well, I guess. So, excuse me if I get a little bit throaty. I'm excited about today's podcast because, well, the last week we spoke about David Attenborough and how he turned 100. And I also discussed what the world was possibly like before he was born or when he was born and what we've lost since. I mentioned Palestine as an ancient living ecosystem with olive trees that were thousands of years old. And I think that I also touched upon land, truly sacred land that holds the memory of people who belong to it. And I think I ended with the question that if the natural world is so beautiful, because of course we're all in love with David Attenborough and his nature documentaries, and we all see that nature and the natural world is this complex, alive ecosystem. So, I think I posed the question that why are we destroying it? And also, what exactly are we destroying? And I kind of want to delve a little bit deeper into that because I've always said the world is not as it seems. And I think metaphysics is kind of pointing towards what is actually real. Because in the Western world, I would say, and probably most of the modern world, to be honest, that we all think about stuff. Some people explicitly say it, but most don't, because whether it's physical items or atoms or molecules, everything is measurable, observable, quantifiable, and if you can't weigh it or scan it or put it in a test tube, well, then it's not really real. It's just feelings or imagination or wishful thinking. And although there are a few caveats to that, with some people speaking about different things, this worldview of essentially materialism is kind of the hidden religion of modern life. When people say to me that they're not into religion or they don't believe, in God or some people are agnostic and they will say, well, you can't prove to me that there is a God. And I'm kind of thinking, are you not looking at nature and everything around us? And of course, there are others who are, atheists in their world viewpoint. And I kind of think this is because people have been educated through secular culture, and everything that used to give the world depth and meaning has been slowly eroded away, and it's getting worse and worse. And I feel that this is a strange thing, because previous civilizations, before this kind of modern Western one, they believed in something totally different. They believed that the physical world, yes, is real, but, it's not just that. It's, there's something behind it, underneath it, running through it. There's something else, something deeper. So almost as if the physical world was just an expression of something that really existed within, below, etc. And different traditions, I think, call it different things. So in Islam, of course, we know that there is more to the world. And I think Christianity believes in that as well. Indigenous traditions speak of land as being alive, and they speak of consciousness and memory within the land. And I don't know about the Greeks and etc. But the point is that all of these civilizations pointed to the same thing, that the world is not just material and matter, it's meaningful matter. And I think there's a real sacred dimension in reality and the physical world that participates in it. And I think it's funny because I recently have started saying to some of my friends that, everything has meaning to it, even inanimate objects. And they kind of just look at me as if I'm a little bit strange. And it's probably because I don't explain myself properly. And it's probably because I don't even know sometimes how to articulate that. But let me try on this episode. So the question is, how did we go from a world that was considered alive and sacred and meaningful to one that turned into just, a place where resources could be used and abused? I think that, and I don't know much about philosophy, but I think that something happened along the way where people thought that progress was leaving these things behind. And I think the general assumption is that, hey, if you believe in this, that there is sacred land and you have a faith, sometimes people scorn that. And I say that because obviously that's not true for everyone. And I think the tide, certainly for some, is turning as people are waking up. And I think that essentially many people assume that they're mature and scientific and academic to think that everything in the world is real and it's just, as I said, a resource. And nothing, it's like people don't believe in essentially a sacred dimension. And I think that for me, I feel as if the world has become blind. And interestingly, in the Quran, it speaks about not the eyes being blind, but the hearts being blind. And I think that as we have become blinded to this sacred dimension, that because we view the world as a resource to be exploited, well, some people certainly do, this is why there is deforestation. This is why oceans and seas are just being exploited and drained. This is why people see land as real estate, even sacred land. And this is why people assume, or they behave as if the body is just a biological machine. Again, that can be, I don't know, that can be exploited. And I could say something contentious here. I won't for the moment, but, you know, people go to extremes, I think, in two different ways. And I feel that the desecration of the natural world and of human beings and communities, as we're seeing currently in Palestine and elsewhere, I think that all comes from the same perspective, right? That that people and things and places have an inherent worth that cannot be measured in economic or strategic terms. And again, I don't know anything about philosophy, but I feel that this is quite a big thing and I need to learn about it. And I mentioned Palestine previously because I feel that, you know, it's one thing saying, oh, it's a really sacred land and the olive trees have been there for thousands of years. This is the example I gave last time. And obviously, yes, that can't be replaced because those olive trees have a depth to them, right? They have been there for literally thousands of years. But I feel that if you really think about it, those olive trees have seen civilizations. And Palestine has had prophets, you know, peace and blessings be upon them all, but prophets who have been on that land. And I think that is just incredible. I think that, you know, apart from obviously human rights violations, etc., I think that, and obviously it's strategically, it's, you know, it's in an amazing place. But the point is, I don't know, that it's such a significant place, you know, religiously and spiritually for the Abrahamic faiths. But it just has a different, I think, quality of being. The people there are incredible as well. And I think that's not just a poetic, I don't know, idea, but I think that's a reality. I don't know. It's just a reality. And I think that the bond that the people have with the land, the indigenous people, the Palestinians, the land belongs to them and the land knows it. And I think that bond is just, it's a deep bond. It's a sacred bond. And it's not just a sacred bond. I think the land in itself, as I understand it and feel it, even though I've never been there, is sacred. It's just so sacred. And yeah, I don't know. I just want to, you know, I did use that as an example previously, and I think it's true. And then if we come back to David Attenborough, which again, we spoke about last week, and I was saying that, you know, at certain points, he's just in awe and he is silenced with his wonder. And I kind of think that it's interesting because at that point he kind of reverts to a human being, as, you know, like from being a broadcaster to a human being who is just awestruck by nature, and he doesn't know how to explain it. And I think this is it. He also senses there is something more to what he sees. There's some sort of, I don't know, trace of the sacred, I guess. And I feel that, you know, when I was, I don't want to say when I was a kid, but I used to think that life is like a fairy tale. And I still think it's like a fairy tale because the world is enchanted. It is alive. It is meaningful. And I feel that it's always been like that, and it always will be like that. And it's just that we have forgotten how to see that. And that's us going blind. And so our real work, and the whole point of this podcast has always been is that we have to do the work to learn to look again. And I think once we start doing that, we have a greater understanding and a connection with ourselves, and therefore we have a greater understanding and connection with others. And as I've always said, when I say others, I mean all living beings. So, the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom, just, everything, all species essentially that are living. But also I think that would extend then, wouldn't it, to inanimate objects as well, because then everything would have meaning and it would be meaningful. And I don't know, in a way it's nice, because I feel as if articulating this and discussing this with all of you, I don't think it's being naive to say that I believe that life is like a fairy tale, or I should say our existence is like a fairy tale, but the happy ever after is in the hereafter, literally, if one makes it to the right place, right? So, but that's what we're working towards, because if you think about it, even in fairy tales that we're told, and some of these are, whether they're Aesop's fables, and some of you may not know what those are, but essentially there were stories that we heard when we were younger that had a moral sort of epiphany at the end. But the point is that essentially I think that in every fairy tale, the protagonist has had to do some work, essentially. They've had to go through some sort of lesson or hardship, and then they receive the happy ever after. So I do feel that the world is like that, right? If we do the work and we are good to humanity and we sort of do what we're meant to do, and obviously everyone has their own perspective on that, and I have my own perspective as a Muslim. So I would just say, as a Muslim, if I worship God and I do my best, and then I get rewarded with my happily ever after in heaven. So it's still, there's still work to do to uncover that. And the beauty is, though, if you do that in this life, then so many wonderful things unfold, and you end up having a fairy tale here as well as the happily ever after later. But the whole point is, and because I'm tired, I'm starting to ramble. And what I want to say really is that please believe in the fairy tale, because the ever after is literally for eternity, and you can unveil joy in this life and the ever after. So until the next episode, let's all believe in the fairy tale, create connection and meaning with the world. Next time you're out, feel a tree, hug a tree, look up at the sky, and just start to feel the meaning in everything around you. Let's create connection, and let's not just change lives, but save lives.
Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.